when he first went in and went to freaking boot camp and all that, we were talking a few times on the phone. He was like, holy shit, like you don't have to be strong. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have anything to be in the military. And he was like, oh my God. And it was funny because Jax was just like, it's okay, dude. They'll weed themselves out, especially as you move up the line. And it was interesting that.
But they don't.
It's the opposite. Hey.
They get promoted. Yeah.
You're listening to the Art and War podcast with your hosts, Mitch and Nathan. Mitch is a former airborne infantry squad leader who now spends most of his time coaching soccer. Nathan is a professional illustrator and an avid shooter with a couple of years of Canadian military experience. Together, they run the Seaburn Art page. Enjoy the show.
Are you talking about BR and how he's terrible for not being here, despite the fact I gave him like 10 minutes notice?
Yeah, completely. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's entirely his fault. He's a piece of shit.
So I'm excited to be uniting for the first time Chalky and Nathan.
Hello.
What's going on? What's going on? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. This is a Chocolate Operator. I don't know why I'm doing the introduction. Paige, you doing the introduction. This is your friend.
All right. So on my unofficial co-hosting adventures between friends, on this episode, we feature Chocolate Operator. Enter my good friend and awesome guy who's done lots of things. Please tell us about some of the things that you've done. How'd you get here today, Chalky?
Oh, man. I'm not sure. You were just like, hey, we're doing a podcast. And I was like, all right, bet. I was like, okay, sounds good. Yeah, I've always wanted to do a podcast.
Hey, motherfucker, what are you doing right now? What are you doing on Friday at 8 o'clock? Exactly. Be there.
Basically.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, though, I think that Adam is his actual name. We call him Chalky, not because he's black, but because he calls himself Chocolate Operator. So just so people don't think backhandedly, they're like, why are you calling me? I've had someone be like, why are you calling this man Chalky? I'm like, because his name's Chocolate Operator. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like he picked that name.
No, it's the best thing ever, Paige. I'm going to start getting you probably at SHOT Show a lot, whenever you introduce me. Every time people introduce me, they're like, this is Chocolate. So the person's face will look so shocked, and I'll shake their hand. I'm like, hi, my name's Adam. I don't know why they call me that, or I don't know why she calls me that. And it just makes you look so bad.
Says the person who at my goddamn birthday party, he has his name tag, because everyone had name tags, and I'm like, what are you? I see him over there, and he's like working on his name tag. I'm like, your name is fucking 4 letters. What are you doing over there? And he's writing like, he's like, I'm making a black name. And I'm like, what's it? And he like writes out like Dak Kushwan or something, puts all these apostrophes in it. And then like, I don't know who you got. You got one of my friends, and they're like,
I got everybody.
Like, I don't know how to say your name. And it's like, what, you racist? You can't read? It says Adam.
they're like Day Schwan, and I'm like, Adam, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, this obviously doesn't say Adam. You know, people take that shit too serious.
That's incredible.
They're like all apologetic and shit. I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. This definitely says Day One.
Everyone who doesn't know Felicity literally still thinks her name is Mei Ling because of you. He's got this gorgeous like. What even is Felicity? Is she like Polynesian or something?
No, she's Thai and Cambodian.
Okay, yeah, she's just she's hot as fuck. But they just put her name he's like, oh, your name's Mei Ling. And it's like, so I was like, oh, Mei Ling and the Kashwan were really nice. And I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. God damn it. For what it's worth, I really wanted Adam to join us because, and your podcast in general, because he has a really interesting history that I know at least a little bit about. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, like where you came from and what you're doing now? Okay.
So, yeah. So basically, prior military, I had the most unremarkable military service ever. So, POGAS reservist. Yeah. So... little after that, I started policing, just doing street patrol. But while I was patrolling, I found out that I like doing interdiction stuff, basically like drug enforcement, stuff like that, or, felonies, violent felonies, stuff like that. So I kind of fell into that, and I had a partner, and we got on SWAT like a year after I got on. It was like a 2-year wait, but they waived it for us. It's like a year with probation. So we got on SWAT, started doing more narcotics and like search warrants and stuff like that. And eventually I went over to narcotics and I became a narcotics investigator and a FBI task force officer. So I have to do a lot of cool stuff.
What can you like, I mean, that's a lot probably to like the average person. I mean, I'm sure that you have a lot of like law enforcement and stuff like listening who probably get that like, oh shit, but like what is that if you break it down a little bit, like what does that mean? What'd you do?
Okay. So specifically I did a lot of like, in general, if you work undercover or you work as a narcotics officer, generally you're just working informants, trying to get targets, marking targets off your list, trying to work your way up the food chain to bigger targets and take off people in the organized crime world. So whether it be like, sex trafficking, drugs, narcotics, vice, the whole nine, gangs, anything you can think of really. But specifically, I fell more into doing UC work, which is undercover work. And that's what I really love doing. So I would work in an undercover capacity, like posing as a criminal, basically. If I needed to get to like a drug target, instead of always having to work up from the bottom, like the little crackhead, or the little meth head, then it's like I could, instead of just using them to buy drugs, I can introduce myself as a criminal as well, So, and obviously I don't like a crackhead. So regardless of what Paige says, so I can enter in at a much higher level than that base floor starting out, and the more and more connections I made, then the better my face is on the street and so forth, so on.
I feel like, I'm sure that you came up and you had like your purple like pimp hat on and you're like, yo, what up? I'm Big Nuts McGeezy and I'll sell you this 8-ball.
That's where you got the name at your party.
Big Nuts McGeezy. Yeah, definitely. That was definitely my name. No, honestly, I just dressed normal, dude. That was always like the funniest thing to me was seeing officers who were narcs and they dress like narcs, or they dress like off-duty cops. They're wearing like Merrills or Solomons or 511s or, they're wearing like BRCC shirts and shit. I'm like, bro, you look like an undercover cop. Like,
yeah,
you're working undercover, but you look like an off-duty cop. So Jesus. I just dressed normal, like how I dress on the streets, Jordans, freaking snapbacks, whatever, depending on where I was going. Or if I was going somewhere that had a specific dress code, I just dressed like that,
I remember the day that I started questioning what I was wearing was I was sitting in a mall and an undercover cop, well, not an undercover, an off-duty cop came up and sat with me and asked what department I was from.
What were you wearing? Like, were you?
It's like as far as I knew, I was dressed normally. I had like a shirt and shoes, jeans.
The off-duty cop looks like 90% of the 2A community. Like,
yeah,
everybody dresses the same. They all wear the 100%. Same shit, love the same brand. So yeah, I'm like, ugh, you look like an off-duty cop.
Yeah, it wasn't even like 511. I don't own any grunt style. I don't own like any branded shit. I to this day I don't know. Maybe it's the haircut.
They just saw you and they're like, man, that guy looks hella gay, and you're in Canada, so they're like, I'm hella gay, and he probably wasn't even a cop. He's probably just like,
just like this? Just cruising.
To pretend. Be like, I'll be the robber. Why don't we can have some hate speech role play? You can say you don't believe in the government, and I'll tell you to kill yourself legally.
I'll freeze your bank account first.
Yeah. You want to go to no-fly list, you dirty little boy?
Move your 18-wheeler.
Fucking so Adam and Felicity and I are cruising around Seattle when they came to visit.
You never explained who Felicity is. I'm going to
his girlfriend. I
was going to say that's what I ascertained, but I feel like the listeners should get that.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked about Felicity because I know I have because I fucking love her, and you probably just don't remember. That's probably more accurate. Let's be honest. But
you've talked about Felicity, but you've never introduced her. Yes, anyone who doesn't know Felicity, it's like we all don't know Felicity.
We're cruising around Seattle, and we go into an establishment, and I have my bag checked because I'm carrying a weapon, and like they're like, oh, and I was like, I think the guy was sort of like, oh, I don't know if you can have this. Like, do you have a permit for this? I'm like, yeah. And he like checks. He's like, okay. And
Permit this dick.
whatever, I keep my gun with me. But at some point on the way out, Adam and Felicity and I are waiting over by like a train, one of the trams to come through, and this guy comes up and starts talking to us, and he just kind of starts like interjecting in our conversation, and I'm like, I don't know who this is, but I'm like being friendly. He looks like some like grubby kind of contractor, like kind of fucked up teeth and like jeans and a ball cap, and I'm like, all right, I figure he's here for construction, like he's got the boots on and whatever. And then we have this talk for a minute, and then he kind of fucks off, and Adam's just kind of like mean mugging him. And then I sit down, and Felicity and Adam are like, yeah, that was a cop. Like, we just got feted. And I'm like, why? And he's like, oh, because where you were at, and you had a gun. Like, clearly they felt the need to come like talk to you about it. And I was like, oh, but he never mentioned that. It was just that moment where he was like, yeah, he's not very good. He's like, see that thin blue line bracelet? See that fucking hat and those pants? Yeah. He's like, that was a
dude
cop.
Literally had the off-duty cop starter kit. But he was like, he was wearing like hiking boots and stuff, which I guess is normal in the Pacific Northwest, but like it's not normal outside of that area. You know, if you don't have anywhere with a lot of hiking trails, this dude obviously wasn't hiking. I'm like, okay, he's dressed head to toe like a Fed. And I just started listening to him and the questions she's asking her. I'm like, this is odd. Like, why is he asking her these questions? These are the questions I'd be asking somebody if I was interrogating them without them knowing I was interrogating them. Yeah. So I fall back into the crowd after we got off the tram, and I'm just watching this guy, and he's like looking for an exit. And so he's like going this way, and then he'll double back and come this way. And I'm like, yep. And I pull my girl back. I'm just like, look at him. Watch him. I'm like, he's trying to find a way. He's trying to find somewhere to go, but he doesn't know this area. Like, were we inside of a mall? What was that place?
No, we got out at one of the the tram we got out of was one of the mall areas. Okay, so we got out like a shopping district, and he was like looking around, and you're like, he doesn't know.
He was looking for an exit, and then it was so funny because he would have to jump back into the group where Paige was, and he had to like go down the escalator with them, and then he tried to find an exit, but he couldn't, so he had to go out the same front door. And then he gets outside of the mall, and I see him like looking left and right, and he finally just goes left and fucks off around the corner.
I'm just having a friendly conversation about what the fuck all ever. I'm like, cool, I'll talk to strangers. Like, where are you from? Like, what
you are like friendly to a fault. You would like you would walk into a dark alley and just have a conversation with all the hooligans.
How do you think I met Chalky?
Yeah, I mean that's how we met. Pretty sure.
I was selling drugs in the alley.
I saved him from a fight. There was this crackhead, and he was there, and he was trying to have his way with Chalky, and I said, no, you will not have your way with this man. And then I saved him.
Be gone, foul orc.
No, it was amazing though. Just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't mind talking to people. I'm so used to weird fucking people from like either my crackhead hometown or just in Seattle. Like, I've made amazing friends talking to strangers, so I'm just never going to stop. Like, I'm open, but I'm not vulnerable. So it's like, I'll talk to someone, but I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. How would you... So just a curious question for the listeners out there. How would you spot, and obviously this wouldn't apply to all of them, an undercover cop? Because that's something that I find super interesting. Hey, that's a Fed. The hiking boots, how he carries himself. He's looking for an exit, but he doesn't know the area. Just what would you... Because I remember when the protests were happening around the 2020-2021 time, I went and watched one just from a distance in my home city. And like the white guy with the coiffed hair wearing like 5'11" boots with like the shoulder strap lines under his t-shirt, that was pretty obvious. But I'm wondering what you, who's actually done undercover work, have to say about that.
Yeah, so that's a good question, dude. And honestly, that's what I ask myself, you know, like you have to be able to put yourself into the shoes of your adversary or your opponent, you know, whoever you're going up against, your op for.
Yeah.
Is like, if I'm going undercover for an operation, I have to be able to think like them. Just like if I'm doing undercover work, if I'm doing an op, I have to be able to think like a criminal, you know, I have to be able to think like a drug dealer. What does this specific demographic dress like? How do they talk? You know, what do they drive? You know, like I had a couple different cars I drive. Depending on who I was meeting or what my operation was, that's how it would be. Same thing with riots and stuff like that. Like, yeah, of course there's undercover cops. Like, most people think that the reasons they're there is nefarious, but for the most part, on a bigger scale, I'd say a lot of it's not. Of course, yeah, I think maybe there is some of that in there, you know, like, I would never say that there isn't, but just from a purely law enforcement standpoint, you have to be there, because if shit goes bad and people start getting popped, then they're going to be like, oh, where the fuck was the police? Why wasn't the police there? You know, like, because generally nobody's going to shoot somebody in front of a uniformed cop, you know? So there's a lot of times where you have to go plain clothes, is what we call it, to blend in, you know, at events. Even if it wasn't a riot, if it was just like a big event or something, you know, then still we'd have to be plain clothes for that. If it's just, you know, like the stupid events and celebrations that your city has, it's just like a bunch of people in one fucking place, like spring flings and festivals and stuff like that, you know. There's still plain clothes there as well, just because, you know, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So basically, I would just think, what do cops look like? If you're good, you see, then you're going to think, what does a cop look like? What does a cop talk like? How does a cop act? And just do the fucking opposite.
Yeah.
You know, like, I always loved the gray man shit. Like, I remember at the beginning, I was like, oh man, this gray man shit is pretty dope. And so I started getting into like the gray man shit. And then I saw like all the gray men are not gray men. They're like blend into your surroundings. Like, don't stand out, but they all wearing like Patagonia and freaking. I'm like, bro, you look like a gray man. Like, you're defeating the purpose of the gray man. Like, what
you drive a lifted Tacoma that's been painted olive drab. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Which, like, it's totally cool if you want to do that. Just like, don't think that you're not going to stand out.
Yeah,
it's immediately like,
totally
this guy's carrying a fucking gun.
Yep. It's like, even with the fanny pack, like, you know, sometimes I'll carry a fanny pack.
Yeah.
But you can't carry a fanny pack anymore, because everybody knows, like, either this guy's like a fucking super tourist or he has a gun.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you know, like, oh, I carry my fanny pack and it has a concealed compartment.
Yeah.
Okay. But everybody knows you're carrying in there, so it's not really a concealed compartment.
I think if you wore just like a black and white Adidas fanny pack and you were wearing like an AOC t-shirt and, you know, like jorts, I think you might be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
But basically every other time it's like, yeah, no, he's got a fucking gun in there.
Yeah, dude, and you can apply that to basically everything. Even like when I was doing like, okay, interdiction, or if I was doing uniform work and I was looking for targets, if I see a bunch of middle-aged like hooligans and they're wearing a fucking SpongeBob backpack, they probably got a gun in there. Like, that's where they always keep their gun and their drugs. It's in the SpongeBob or the Cars backpack. Like, you're a grown or older teenager and you're wearing that kind of backpack, you probably got a gun in there, or you probably have something in there.
Yeah.
I want to argue with that, but then I'm like, look at this cute Pusheen purse. It'll fit my Glock. Like, I gauge like bag purchases based off of like, because I do a lot of off body carry and I feel really comfortable with that. But I like small purses, and I'm always just like, oh, like, hold my gun up for reference. Like, this will fit, and then I know
just pulls it out in the Walmart, just puts it in front.
I'll take my purse and I'll look at it. Like, you know, I'm like, I don't know, let's see if it fits. Like, I gotta take it out, be like, yeah, that's about right. I could get that in there, you know, and then put it back.
Yeah.
And then I wonder if I don't know if that's like, I'm still working to hide it. And if it's at like a fucking Ross or something, I don't think anyone cares anyway. But I'm always just like, you know, I know concealed is concealed, but I'm like, I gotta see if my gun fits. I gotta check right now. So, you know, it's okay.
Yeah, but you're a girl. Like, it's normal for you to have a purse, even if you don't have a gun.
You know, hey, but in Seattle, anyone can have a purse. Let me tell you. So next time, you know how to hide it. You just, grown ass man, just put on a skirt, nice pair of heels, and paint up some eye makeup, and no one will question you. They'll be like, you can't question him. You're a bigot, and that's how you get him. They're like, double down, double dip. Be like, you can't. That's a queen. You can't do that. You'll just be all, can't stop me with your long nails.
No, that's true though. Like, okay, so even if like the times where I wore the sling bag, like, have you ever saw me wear like a crossbody bag, Paige, or a sling? Yeah. Like, people never really question if you have a gun, unless it's someone you know. But if I'm just like out and about in public, guys are just like, oh, I like that bag. Where'd you get it? But they're never like, oh, you got a gun in there? Versus if you wear a fanny pack, dudes are just looking at you. They're like, yeah, he's packing, you know, like, yeah. It's just become synonymous with carrying now, because all the tactical and like vet bros and all these guys are wearing fanny packs now, you know?
Yeah.
That's why you got to just train your butthole to hold your Glock so that you can conceal it with power.
Yeah, it's called zap
no
carry.
one can stop you. Adam's
called
like,
what?
I'm doing that right now. He's like, I've got
carry.
2 Glocks in my butthole right now.
Zap carry?
Zap carry. Yeah. No,
Wait,
I
it's
got
got
one
a
up
name?
right now. Zap carry. It's got a full it's got the 33 round stick and everything.
I remember, I think it was Donut actually talking about off screen. So Adam
Visual
just pulled
reference,
a
Adam.
Louis Vuitton holster fucking gun right out of his
With
butt.
the Glock 43, I'm working my way up to a 43X right now.
Oh yeah, the 43 is great.
I carry a Desert Eagle in my asshole. I trained her. It's calloused now. I don't even need Kydex anymore.
Just too compensated. Like,
It's so good.
How's it going, lads and ladies? BR and Nathan here to take a quick break to tell you about our Patreon. Not only do we want to continue improving the quality of what we can do here on Art and War, but we want to push what we do all over at Seaburn Art, from the guides to pursuing video content and keeping us warm during another winter of illness and death, and the Patreon helps us get after it.
but what's in it for you? Our Patreon subscribers enjoy 5 different tiers of exclusive perks, ranging from all the content we'd post on a pre-Zuckerberg Instagram, downloadable high-resolution guides, targets such as Redcoat Skinwalkers, John Harvey Kellog, seasonal targets, and more. Behind-the-scenes info like my personal art, introducing all new exclusive mini-podcast episodes, and at our highest tier, get monthly art commissions created by yours truly.
You can find our Patreon via the link in this episode's description, at patreon.com/SeaburnArt, or in the Seaburn Art page's bio on Instagram.
This episode was brought to you by AWS, Advanced Warfighting Solutions.
We use the out of their gear here at Art and War.
Everything's made in North Carolina, and they make everything.
Everything.
I'm a big fan of their SMU war belt, the snack pack, their assault pack, their plate carrier, kind of a big fan of everything. And they've been around for a long time with a lot of hard use kit.
Overseas and here at home.
Sorry, I'm just reattaching my phone. Sorry, it'd come loose. This is my fidget spinner, okay?
I know. AWS is our longest running sponsor, and they've helped us do a little bit of everything here at Art and War, from keeping the guides coming out by providing Nathan a new iPad, as well as chucking gear our way so we can get out there on the range.
Tough as hell gear so they can help us go LARP in the woods.
Yep, my assault pack comes out with me every time I'm in the woods. If you want to pick up a one-and-done Molly pistol belt, look no further than the AWS SMU belt. Use code ARTandWar10 for $10 off. We get no kickbacks, you just save money. Link to their site down in the description and in the Seaburn Art page's bio. Thanks for listening, now let's get back to the show.
No, I was gonna say though that basically when you're talking about like all this off-duty shit, it was funny because we're at this fucking Brazilian cafe, and Adam and Felicity and I are getting drinks. I think Jax is there too, but they're sitting there. There's this like local cafe that's really great. We're getting things, and Adam got his hands in his pocket. What's that?
We went to a Brazilian cafe?
Yeah, it was the place who was like, we got the fucking acai
sober?
bowls and shit. It was good. Well, that was the place where
Oh, okay, okay, I remember.
You leaned over next to me. You're sitting there, your hands are in your pocket. You know, you got your fresh kicks on, and you lean over, and you're like, "Hey, Paige," and I'm like, "What?" And you're like, "That man does crime." And you look over, and there's this fellow in like a nice, like, you know, kind of beige suit and his pair of shoes or whatever, and he's like, "That," or he's real deep in undercover.
But the more you looked at him, though, the more you recognize it, right?
The more you look, the crimier it gets.
Right?
Just like,
What exactly? Like, paint me a word picture of what exactly. Like, this is a crimes man. What made him a crime man?
Okay, so this guy's like middle-aged. What ethnicity would you say he was?
Brazilian,
Okay.
South American. It's a Brazilian cafe. Yeah.
Yeah. So super nice beige, like 3-piece suit. This is like a place where you go to get breakfast, right? Like I'm in there with joggers and a hoodie, and basically everybody else is dressed accordingly. You know, it's just like regular clothing. And this guy is in there, and he's like, he means business, dude. You just see his face, and he has another guy with him, and he's like on the phone, and he's like talking super intensely, and he has like expensive watch on and shit. I'm like, yeah, this guy's a shot caller for sure. He looks like straight up like a GTA fucking stereotypical character.
he was rendered out of GTA 5 into real life.
It looks like it.
Yeah,
GTA RP.
I'm convinced though, Adam, like you have such a keen eye for this shit. Like everyone else could probably read all these books about like behavioral science and get these things, and Adam just like smells the air and he's like,
There's a crime boy over there. Nasty crime boy is just running around.
He's like, I can smell him.
That's why I was good at what I did. Because people are like, I don't know, like all my partners and like all the FBI guys, you know, the agents in charge, they're like, you're really good at acting like this. So like, how are you doing? I was like, because I'm not acting like, motherfucker, like, I spent a lot of time in the projects before I became a cop. Like, this is like, I'm pretending when I'm the cop. You know what I'm saying? Like I have to change myself to be around y'all motherfuckers. Yeah. So now I'm in my natural habitat, like buying drugs and wearing Jordans and like concealing my gun. Like I used to wear my gun for UC operations, and I remember that they're like, "Oh, this is a really good idea." I'm like, "No shit." Like, how many drug dealers do you know, or people that are doing like serious, like violent felonies that don't have a gun on them? Like, what the fuck? Like, why wouldn't I?
You grew up in the projects though, right? Out in the
No, I grew up in the country, but I had a lot of cousins that grew up in the projects, and I would visit them all the time, maybe hang with them, spend the night, whatever. So I saw a lot of hood shit at an early age, just being in the hood.
In my natural habitat, he said.
Like the first time I saw somebody get shot, I wasn't a cop. The first time I had a gun pulled on me, I wasn't a cop, so it's like.
Yeah, so it kind of anesthetizes you to it. That reminds me of a good quote that a friend of mine said, which is, aren't you worried about, XYZ criminals? And his response was, motherfucker, I am the criminals. And that just always stuck with me, and I use that more than I should. So you always say, this is the first time we're interacting, but you are talking about the cop stuff with past tense. I think it's safe to say you're no longer law enforcement.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's correct.
What do you do now, and why did you leave, in either order that you like to answer?
Oh, man. So now, really, I just do content. So I do content full time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, working on building up my socials. I had a little wrench thrown into my plans because I got an injury recently. So I got out of law enforcement, appreciate it, like close to 2 years ago, probably. Moved down to Texas with the homies. Had a complete tear of my tendon. I got out of law enforcement because, I don't know, dude, I was just kind of getting fed up with all the politics of it, and just seeing how shit was and seeing that you can't really change it. I was always one of the guys who thought, I can change it from the inside, I could fix this, or I see the issues. Yeah, it's like, you think if you get to a certain position within an organization that you can change things, but when it's so deep rooted in the organization, then you can never really effectively change that. And at the very most, you can change it on a small level within your unit or your shift. Really, usually not even your department, but like globally, dude, it's like my biggest thing is cops don't train enough, they're not proficient enough with their hands and their personal weapons or with their actual weapons, their guns, their long guns, their sidearm, they're not proficient enough to affect arrest, usually without escalating force. And a lot of times not even proficient enough to stop the threat once it gets to that level and you're in a shootout.
Why do you think it is that they're not proficient? Do you think it's a self thing, or is it just purely like a budgeting thing? Like they don't have the money, or a combination of both, I guess?
No, honestly, it's a culture thing. It's like, it's just gotten to the point where it's so deeply embedded into culture that guys like me and, a lot of my buddies who are super proactive, and we go out and like actively try to find bad dudes, we'd get in trouble, or we'd get disciplined by our higher ups, because when they were policing, you have to understand, they were reactive. And a lot of policing back then was reactive. It's like, you get a call and you respond to it. And somewhere along the way, hitters just started coming up, and they're like, let's start policing proactively. We know there's an issue over here. We know that people keep getting shot over here. So let's go patrol this area and arrest these offenders who are shooting people, just randomly shooting people, drive-bys, shooting civilians who aren't even gangbangers, all this type of shit. But the more and more you do that, the more and more trouble you're going to run into. So you'll find yourself having to do paperwork. You're going to get complaints because you had to beat somebody's ass, or because you had to pull your gun on somebody, or you may have had to like put your gun in somebody's face or against somebody's head, and they're going to complain. And then your supervisor, who wasn't that type of officer, is like, oh, well, you're going out here and you're doing all this stuff, and now you're tied up, or now you have a complaint I have to deal with. And it just gets to the point where a lot of people would just rather not deal with it, And on top of that, it's like fitness standards. I talked to my SWAT commander at one point, and we were trying to get like a fitness standard. We're like, why don't we have a departmental fitness standard? Like, we have all these cops who I'd never want to see come to a call for me if I was like a civilian in trouble. Like, they're not going to chase anybody. They're not going to fight anybody. And they fucking almost fail their pistol quals every year. Not to mention their rifle qual. So why don't we have a fitness standard? And so my SWAT commander was like, he was an older guy, super fit bodybuilder. And he's like, think about this. He's like, if we have a fitness standard, it's going to be department wide. Do you think that your chief, your deputy chief, your majors, your captains and lieutenants, how many of them you think could pass that fitness standard? And we're like, damn, you're right. He's like, that's why we'll never have a fitness standard. And the majority of other law enforcement agencies across the globe, it's just a top-down type thing. Because if they enforce these standards, then everybody has to do it, including themselves.
Why can't it be compartmentalized, though? Like, you think about it, it's like it doesn't make sense. You can have someone who is effectively like a fat has-been, maybe, with some of the things that they've done, like actively. But in any situation, I was just listening to them talk about this at Darcy. He was explaining how he's like, look, I don't care how fit or strong you are. He's like a young man in his prime, and that 18 to 27-year-old range is going to be physically more capable than a man in his 40s, like every single fucking time. Like, you just get to a point where there comes a point where you have to like pass that baton over to those. So why, like, if there's like a fitness standard, it would make sense that it'd be like, okay, we'll compartmentalize it via age. Like, then you make like age caps for certain things in the same way that we have in Senate or anything else. Like, you have to be this age to, be a chief or have this many years of experience. It might prevent inexperienced people from being in experienced roles and have your force be strong.
So you have to think, though, most agencies are scraping the bottom of the barrel, which is why they're dropping standards like crazy. When I first came in, like, you couldn't have smoked marijuana, I think. And it was like marijuana, not hard drugs, within a pretty decent amount of time. Like, it was a long time. And I'm like, dang, glad I wasn't out here just smoking marijuana because, I couldn't be a cop. Now I think a lot of places the time is like a year. So it's like, as long as you haven't done it within a year, then you can be a cop. Some places used to require a bachelor's degree. You rarely ever see that anymore. Some places don't even require a high school diploma to be a cop anymore. And not only that, it's like you pass all the standards for background. A lot of people wash out with the physical standard at the beginning to get into the academy. Like, we saw a lot of agencies, bigger agencies generally do a better job of weeding those people out of the process. But I saw some smaller agencies. That's the norm around the country because most jurisdictions don't have huge agencies. Your local city or town or county probably doesn't have a huge agency. So they would get to the academy. You have to pass the test to get hired at my agency in front of there was like 100 applicants, over 100 applicants in my process. And you have to do it in front of all those people. And if you pass, then you go on to the next process. That's after you passed all your written exam. And then you go to your oral board and you do your interviews. These people from these smaller agencies got to the academy and they looked like they had never taken the fitness test before. Like, they were literally failing on the first, second, third obstacle or just quitting mid-run. And it's like, what? So yeah, that would be, that would work in a perfect world where there was enough qualified applicants that were physically fit enough, smart enough, could pass oral boards to have that fitness standard and say only this age range. But then you don't have anybody that's on the street, because if you aren't fit for duty, then you can't patrol if you have that requirement, that fitness requirement.
That's pretty brutal. Like, just thinking about that, and all the defund the police things, I'm sure doesn't help with that by any means when you have that. That's a hell of a thing. Wow.
It doesn't. And it all trickles down to training. It's like most agencies don't have a lot of people that are capable of training at a higher level, Like, I ran a lot of basic tactics and clearing and room clearing and stuff like that for my agency. Being on SWAT, like I started a program, and then a lot of my guys on SWAT started helping me, and we got all the way up to doing force on force training. That's unheard of, at most agencies, doing like force on force outside of the academy and just doing like weekly or monthly force on force training.
Dude, I had
Generally,
no idea how rare that was.
Yeah, generally, even firearms training, it's like you'll train once or twice a year with your pistol, and it's up to you to do your training outside of that, unless you're on SWAT or a specialized unit or something,
Yeah, that really tracks. There's a lot of horror stories that I hear on this side of the border, and I imagine we have a lot of military guests. We haven't had a ton of law enforcement. Orion Training Group being one. Administrative Results was formerly one, but that's, I think, it. But something that we get a lot of in the people that are from the military side is that morale is toilet. Everything is toilet. Everything's become just a political and bureaucratic mess. Morale is horrible. Retention is horrible, and they're doing all the wrong things to try and alleviate that. And the fitness standards and the failing marksmanship and everything else standards are kind of stark parallels to what we're hearing about the military side. It's very, very similar. And unfortunately, I think the bureaucratic way of looking at it is, oh, well, we need to recruit more, so let's drop standards more. Let's make it so you can do this. Let's scrape the bottom of the barrel. Okay, you don't need a degree. You don't need anything. I guess it's totally fine. We'll just take kind of whoever. And it kills the morale of the people who are already in it. I'm not, saying anything to the efficacy of whether those standards are good or bad to begin with. I am simply saying what you get as an end result. Did you notice any of that in the force before you left?
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like what used to be the exception. So like whenever I was policing with a lot of my homies, we would always like people like that. We would like kind of single those people out, and like kind of, I don't know, kind of haze them. We're like, you're trash, but we're like, you're going to get yourself killed or you're going to get somebody else killed because you're afraid. Like you're afraid to run, you're afraid to fight. So we would take those people and throw them to the fire. We would go take them. And I was a training officer later in my career. And we take those people to the projects and we make them jump out on foot and, go talk to people because we know they're going to run. We know this person has a gun. We get a call for, hey, this guy's walking around with a gun. He just flashed it at me or he just shot off some shots. Then we throw those people into those situations just to show them, like, you're not going to always be able to just sit in your car and respond to a shoplifting or respond to some skateboarders or some stupid shit, that doesn't really matter. Like at some point in your career, if you work in certain jurisdictions, you're going to have to be put into a critical situation. Even if you live in a smaller jurisdiction, if that happens, like, what are you going to do if you've never prepared for it? Like you've never even mentally prepared yourself for what would happen, what you would do if this happened. Yeah. I would run those scenarios through my head so much that when they actually happen, like, yeah, it sucked, but it's kind of like reverting back to training because you've had so many like mental reps of that situation that makes sense. Like if this guy runs, if this guy breaks bad, if this guy fights, then what am I going to do? But it's the same in the military as well. You got to think about like these people are trained to pass the minimum standards. Like the standard is like kind of how you're like, oh man, like 18 pull-ups, a 3-mile run in this time frame. But if you look at the actual minimum standard, it's like it's usually not very hard. Yeah. You have people who never worked out in their lives and they get into like maybe a delay entry program or something and they join the Marines, never did sports, never did anything. And they passed the standards for the Marine Corps, which has the hardest basic entry of any military branch in the U.S.,
That's so mind-blowing to me. Like just recently I have a younger cousin of mine who became a Green Beret and he did all of his training. All kind of happened right during all the COVID shit. But when he first went in and went to freaking boot camp and all that, we were talking a few times on the phone. He was like, holy shit, like you don't have to be strong. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have anything to be in the military. And he was like, oh my God. And it was funny because Jax was just like, it's okay, dude. they'll weed themselves out, especially as you move up the line. And it was interesting that.
But they don't.
It's the opposite.
They get promoted. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least in his faction, it seems like being an actual Green Beret now, going through SEER, all those things, like where he was going, it got narrowed down pretty tightly. Selection isn't for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you get within a specialized unit, then what you see is like general population of the military or law enforcement is fucking laughable. And I remember when I got on SWAT, and I would go back to my Marine Corps unit because I was still reserving at the time. They're like, "Oh, what's it like? What's your SWAT? What's SWAT like?" I'm like, dude, my SWAT team, literally just like my 2 teams of guys, probably like 16 dudes, would run through this entire unit. Like if we got into like a force on force, we literally just run through this whole unit. Granted, it wasn't an infantry unit, but a lot of those guys were infantry guys. But even like basic infantry guys against dudes who have like advanced tactics, like a SWAT team or, SF dudes, it's like you look at basic infantry and you're like, you're a basically trained marksman.
Yeah.
Well, and that was just, I remember him like talking to me on the phone about that. I mean, like he went in, so I guess they had recently changed some of the fitness standards, I think again in like 2019 or 2018, I don't remember exactly, but they very recently implemented something. And my cousin went through, and it's funny, he was almost embarrassed talking about it. He's like, I don't mean this in any weird like bragging way. Keep in mind, my cousin is a fucking Chad. He's just, and I'm not talking about my other cousin, Matt. This is a different cousin. He's my younger cousin. But he's this super, fit young man, tall, strong. He was like the, classic football body type, like 6 foot something, 200 pounds in high school, right? Just that kind of kid. But he's just like, holy shit. He's like, I completely destroyed every fitness standard they had here. He goes, I don't mean that in some weird like bragging, like, oh, look what I did. He's like, he's like, this wasn't, he goes, my daily workout routine is harder than this shit. And I was like, damn. Like, he's like, it's really, it kind of freaked him out a little bit. That's what Jack's like, it's okay. Don't worry. It's going to be better.
Yeah.
I just like that blew my mind, being like, wow. There's really people who can't run a 20-minute mile out there.
No, they're really, and a lot of them become cops and military.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fucking tragic. I saw that.
I
So
mean, look at the general population, just as a whole. Something that I, not even ashamedly, I'll go to the local grocery store and I'll just like in my head subconsciously keep a tally on what proportion of people are obese, and the number is like half. Just in general, it's half of all people are overweight.
It's insane, and it's higher than that in some places. And the spirit of like, I know if in the spirit of Mitch, if he were here right now, he'd be like, I fucking hate fat people.
Yeah,
he said some amazing rants. He's like, no, fat's a mentality. It's a mentality. It's beautiful.
And I agree with it. It's
what episode was it? You guys had this whole chat.
Oh, the fat shaming episode. Yeah, the John Harvey Kellog.
Yeah, of course, the Kellogg ones. Every time I make cereal and make a story, I tag you in it. I'm like thinking of you guys,
motherfucker.
And the castration of the nation.
John Harvey Kellogg is why 51% of American men are circumcised. That is insane to me. Because of one guy who said, what's the proportion of the American population that's Jewish? I think it's like 2% of people. 51% is circumcised, all because some fucking weird old Baptist dude thought that it would stop people from masturbating.
What?
Well,
you didn't know that?
No, I thought it was just so I don't have a weird elephant trunk.
Oh no, it's to stop you masturbating, dude.
I didn't want my schmigma. I didn't want that. My mama said when I was born, not my son. He's not gonna have no schmigma. He's not gonna have no. He'll sacrifice a little pleasure for a nice clean mushroom for breeding.
My son gonna get bitches.
My son gonna get bitches.
He's not gonna have the hidden cheese.
Sacred cheese. Sacred. What was it? There was this whole bit. There's another one where you were talking to fucking Grantham about y'all's dicks. You went out in the weeds, but I remember him talking about his dick getting frostbit in that one. I was like,
yeah. He was taking a piss.
Yeah, pissing out icicles in like negative 60 degree weather. Some fuck all bull. That guy's an animal. The shit that he's done. It's amazing. We were just out at his range, and like he's got all these beautiful, mountains and stuff out there where they're at. And I went out there with him and we're running around and we go up some of these hills and, he's got a stride. He's way taller than I am. So 3 to 5 of my steps are like 1.5 of his stride. So he's getting up there and I'm like keeping pace with him up the mountain. I'm a little bit like, sucking air. I'm in a higher altitude, but doing the thing where you're trying not to be a bitch about like, yeah, I'm not that tired, like my cardio is good. And then we get back to the house or at some point and he's like, yeah, because it was kind of funny. I could hear you trying to keep up. I'm like, you cocksucker. You knew the whole fucking time. And I'm just trying to keep pace. He's like, huh.
Christ.
God damn it.
So do they circumcise guys in Canada too, or?
They do, but basically almost everywhere else in the world, with the possible exception of Israel, circumcision is not nearly as popular as it is in the States. And it's entirely because of John Harvey Kellog, who was a staunch, insane anti-masturbation activist. He did a whole bunch of really wacky shit. He circumcised girls too, which was a little worse. He used chemicals. That one didn't really turn into a cultural institution, but
I wonder why. Man, it had so much ground.
Isn't there a tribe in Africa that does that or something?
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, there's a fucking tribe. I remember reading in all places in a fucking Cosmo magazine when I was like 14, and it was about like female circumcision in some fucking like African village where they literally like, once you become like of a certain age, they take you, they snip everything, and then they sew up like the vaginal hole or parts of it. So you have like just enough to like bleed through. And then when you get your husband or the person who takes you, they effectively get to rip that open like a present and then have what they want with it. So they're like, yeah, this is like, it's like a way to guarantee virginity. And there's some other, I want to say that there's another place in the Middle East that does something similar, but I don't remember like what it was. I just remember reading about that being like, oh my God.
Right. That so
yeah, that's pretty gruesome. But you know what, man? Okay, so maybe I see what that guy was getting at, the masturbation guy, because if I had to pull my foreskin back every time I wanted to piss, and I don't know, that's like you're already in the motion, right?
You don't have to do that.
Oh no, I didn't.
You don't have to pull it back every time you pee.
Really?
Really?
Nathan would know. I think he's still got his little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, no,
oh, yeah.
It pulls back on its own when you're doing the do. Not that I would ever know that. I'm a child of Christ, and I would not ever have premarital relations ever.
I'm going to go study the Bible with this fine lass.
Study the Bible right now.
Oh, man. Thank you. I'm tired of pulling back this foreskin. Every time I do, it makes me want to beat off.
You know someone out there has that, though.
It's like someone out there. It's like never got in the way. The only time I ever have to do anything is just cleaning, and it takes like no time.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why we're talking about this. Like this is for
this is not the first time that this has happened.
This is not the first time.
Talk about his uncircumcised dick.
We have talked about foreskin like an uncomfortable amount for.
You keep bringing it up. You're obsessed with John Harvey Kellog. Maybe you just really like foreskin. You want to talk about
it? This is probably the first time I've ever had an actual conversation about foreskin.
Well, what do you think they do with all the foreskins? Like millions of babies get circumcised every year. What do you think happens to it?
They save it, right? Like how you save the umbilical cord and they just give it to you when you leave the hospital.
No, I think they're harvesting them. I think they've industrialized
Adam's
them.
Like, I keep mine in a little locket.
Millions of baby foreskins.
Right beside my baby teeth.
That's how they make the face creams. It makes it really soft.
You just imagine having like a fucking necklace of like baby teeth and like little, what's that? Oh, that's my foreskin. It's a little like dried up flap. That's some like Ed Gein shit. You know that serial killer Ed Gein? Know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, Adam probably doesn't know because I feel like it's a white person thing to be obsessed with serial killers.
I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, you're right. I don't know who that is.
So Ed Gein was the serial killer who is famous for, and this was early 1900s, I believe. He would take his victims and make crazy clothing and furniture out of them. Like killed tons and tons of people. Have like there's like Ed Gein inspired Halloween works, and it's like suitcases and shit with like parts of faces and like shoes that have like eyeballs and lips. Like they're real horrors of society.
So he's like the guy from Jujutsu Kaisen then.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a little bit, but
What?
probably even grosser if you can
Making
imagine.
skin lamp shades and stuff.
It was real. And you're just like, oh, this shoe is made of 4 different people.
The shoe is a foot.
He had a belt made of nipples, which is kind of a power move.
Wait,
honestly.
actually?
Yeah, he had a belt made of nipples. Yeah, Google
How do you
Ed
even do
Gein.
that?
I
That
know
is
you're going to. Just check it out.
I want to.
Look that up, Jamie. Look that up.
Ed Gein nipple belt. Oh my god, it's real.
I told you. Of course.
Oh man, I hate that.
There's some great
Favorite
Ender
rap.
albums I can send you later if you want to get in the nitty gritty of it. Done some
Holy
digging.
fuck, his gloves were made of human skin.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Oh my
it
god,
was
the nipple
horrible.
belt.
I mean, amazing in the truest sense of the word. Not like, I'm just like, damn, that's fucking
Oh,
a level of separation from everything. You have to be able to like achieve that. Like at that point, like, are you even human? Like that's amazing. Holy shit. In today's episode of Seaburn Art Podcast.
there exists a belt made of nipples like that. You weren't kidding. I couldn't picture it in my head, and now I have a photo of it in my screen.
Nathan's like, I've never wanted anything more in my life, and now here it is, goals.
I hate this. I hate this so much. Like not a lot disturbs me, but on that note, you know what I kind of want to do?
What's that?
I want to like crowdfund. You know, like how you can have drone swarms.
On that note,
that like they have lights on them and you can fly them to make like moving faces and things like that.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I want to take one of those to off the coast of India somewhere. There's the last undiscovered tribe.
Yeah.
Like there's a tribe of people who've just never come in contact with any.
You know how
of it.
many times that people have tried to put like fly drones and shit over there and they literally just spear the fucker down?
Yeah, well, I want to fly a drone swarm over there and play a face at night, just talking to them and then become their god.
I feel like I saw that as a meme on iFunny.
I do not have iFunny.
Life
That's
emulates art.
It is more than likely I've seen it somewhere on the internet and simply have not been able to get it out of my head.
To be fair, it was probably a screen cap of green text from 4chan on iFunny, which is usually like how the filter goes.
You're speaking words that I don't know.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say
What?
you're speaking a foreign language right
It's
now.
okay. There are people out there who get me. You know.
You spend too much time on the internet.
Let's know.
Yeah.
I was raised on the internet. I had a pretty good balance though, internet and touching grass. I still touch grass. I do things. Oh, speaking of, I'm working on this great design of like a trad wife kind of thing, and it says touch grass, eat ass, and it's
Yep.
just or touch grass, tap ass. I don't know which one I'm gonna go for yet. I might make it a vote. Either way, good shit.
I'm gonna steal that idea before this podcast comes out.
Yeah,
Everybody's
same.
gonna think it was my
I'm
idea.
literally
Fuck you.
already uploading it to my.
As we speak, I'm typing it into the AI generator, and it's already popped out some dope shit.
Fuck 'em.
Yeah, it's
Fuck, doesn't
on
matter. I'm getting over it.
supernerd.com.
Whatever.
It's in our store, literally already.
Circling back to what Adam was saying about training and stuff, though, because I was like thinking about this. Adam and I had a really good conversation the other day about we were just talking about. It was actually before I went to Darcy for Op 4.
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
talking about like fighting and opposition force and like how important that training is and things like whether or not you're fighting or doing any sort of activity that requires focus through duress and adrenaline. Like having any form of training in something where you have to work through those things so that you default to your lowest level of training and you've moved up that bar in your training is pretty fucking invaluable. So I don't know, anyone like out there who, and I know I've said this on your podcast a couple times, Nathan, but in case someone hasn't heard my dumb ass talking yet, basically, if you can't be relaxed shooting guns in front of like a group of friends, people get all stressed out, like, oh, people are watching. It's like, yeah, the fuck are you going to do in real conflict?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot of cool guys, and I've never been, I've never been in a situation where I've been fucking shot at. I've never been in a situation. Now, I don't got a CONUS yet, but
You don't have a bonus skill yet?
not yet. No CONUS, no CONUS, not yet.
Yeah.
But you know,
It'll
you get
happen
these
one day.
people-
You'll make that nipple belt.
I don't think so. I think that's your fantasy.
You'll have that foreskin necklace. Don't worry.
The foreskin necklace. This is
Yeah.
my John Harvey Kellogg necklace. God damn it, we keep diverting back to foreskin.
You'll only be able to take it from 49% of your kills statistically. So
while
be
we're
like
at
a
it,
little
I'm gonna
pop.
make some
Catch a game.
slides out of like the soles of a man's feet.
These feet protect my feet. No, but just the fact that like I've never been in a situation, you know, where I've like, you know, been under actual fire, like had that. I've definitely been in some pretty crazy fucking situations, and I've definitely feared for my life more than once. But Adam, I'm sure you've maybe seen someone like this, and maybe you can think of it, but there's probably those guys who like, they seem like the cool guy, and then as soon as shit hits the fan, they become the most whiny fucking bitch or weak motherfucker you've ever seen in a situation.
Yeah, I 100% have. I've seen like critical incidents like officer down and stuff like that, you know, where this guy, he's like just bragging because he's a combat vet Marine and shit. Like, and I'm like, bro, nobody gives a fuck. Like, stop talking about it so much. Like, it's cool until you talk about it too much. And we were in a critical incident and this guy was just totally, completely useless, you know, and it's like to the point where he was a detriment and I had to tell him to go the fuck away, you know, that kind of shit. Like, I've seen shit like that a lot, but like, yeah, this situation sucks. It sucks for everybody that's involved, but if you just break down and you're useless, it's because you haven't mentally prepared yourself for that, or you know, and especially when you talk like you're such a tough guy or you've done and seen so much shit, but then you see that and you just turn into putty, you know. So that's why like I hear a lot of guys, especially in this community, just like bragging and or they just like they walk around like they're so fucking dope, but in reality they're mediocre at best, you know. They're like, or they're just complete trash. And so I don't know, I have a hard time not calling people out like that just because I'm used to calling people out like that. And there's ways to call people out like that without, I guess, airing their shit out. But it's just getting harder and harder, you know. Paige knows what I'm talking about, but it's just like you ain't really about that life, you know. So just shut up, and nobody would ever have anything bad to say about you if you didn't pretend that you were just like so about it.
Man, I used to feel so strongly about calling people out on things that when I saw something, I'm like, no, you're a fucking idiot. Like, what are you doing? And then I do that. I'd be like, Paige, you don't need to say that. And I'm like, yeah, no one else is saying it. I'm saying the thing that you don't have the nuts to say. And as I've, dare I say, matured in some aspects of my life, I've come to realize that, well, it's probably not necessary. There's a lot of...
I kind of agree to a certain extent, except for when those people have a platform,
yes,
and they're like pushing this bullshit, and they're like teaching bad habits.
Tim Kennedy.
What do you say?
No, sorry, I had a cough.
Or they're like pushing this bullshit out to their audience, and it's people who really, you know, they're looking at
Dakota Meyer. Sorry, I'm just getting over something. I can't quite hear you.
But you know, these people, they like, I don't know, they preach shit that they don't do. You know, they're preaching shit that they don't practice, or they're pretending to be someone, and they have all these people believing it, but in reality, they're like the exact opposite. You know, and I don't know. I feel like to an extent, you know, do we have a responsibility to call those people out when we see that? And, you know, air that shit out or shine a light on it? Or do we just kind of sit back and say, oh, you know, well, fuck those people. They shouldn't follow that person. They shouldn't believe that. They should do their research, or, you know, or they should have better judgment. I don't know. What do you guys think? Also, I'm like, or how much of that is just ego and just me wanting to just like slap motherfuckers in the face?
I mean, some motherfuckers have to be slapped. There's no two ways around it.
I agree.
But that being said, like for the consumer, I don't generally judge them, and I find that the quickness to anger is one of the worst things about this community, and any community, realistically. I've said this about on the podcast before. I think the further into any hobby, any special interest group, it could be, you know, guns and, you know, 2A and, you know, all of the politics that come thereof, is intrinsically, well, as I just said, political. So you're going to get a certain type of personality there, but literally any hobby, like soccer, crochet, competitive vaping, you get far enough into that particular people group and the personalities start to fucking come out. That being said, I don't blame people for not really doing their research on, who they follow, what they think, etc. It's how you react to new information as it comes to you. Are you an
I don't
asshole?
think I blame people for following those people, but
Yeah.
I think like calling out those people who are garnering followers on a false pretense
Yes.
are the cocks.
Dakota Meyer.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I
I don't know where this cough is coming from.
You might need to get that checked, bud.
Yeah, no, I might have the coof. I don't know.
Maybe.
Cooper's over. It's RSV now. Everyone's getting that RSV.
The RSV. What's the RSV?
Oh, dude, yeah, I just got over that shit. Like, literally, that's why my throat sounds like.
Like you suck a fat dick.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That's how you always sound. Whatever.
I mean, yeah, but you could tell there's something else there as well. So that little extra, fucking RSV, yo. It's like some shit that these cruddy ass little kids pass around, and then they give it to their parents, and their parents bring it to other adults.
I've never even heard of it.
What? It can cause like pneumonia or other like upper lower respiratory infections. It fucking sucks. On top of that, like strep is going around as well. So
it's a really bad common cold, and common colds can turn into even more uncommon illnesses like pneumonia or bronchitis.
Yeah, bronchitis as well. Yep.
It's a shitty common cold.
Most healthy like adults are good. It's just mainly it's worse for kids and old people. So
yeah,
but yeah, it's like nationwide right now.
So this is a weird confession, but sometimes I moonlight, and I'm not gay, despite how this is going to sound. I moonlight.
Let me just preface: I'm not gay, guys.
Yes. Go on.
Hold your balls. I'm about to go.
Ain't gay, but $20 is $20. But I moonlight working, like doing some carpentry and prop work in musical theater, like a Broadway style.
That's dope as fuck, though.
Oh yeah, no, it's just here and there, because I know how to run friggin' power tools and whatnot, and the environment's pretty good, but there has been something just ravaging through it. Everyone is sick. They're on a skeleton crew, and this is a multi-million-dollar production, and suddenly half the cast is gone with something that's not COVID. And now I'm reading about RSV. I'm like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe
God's just trying to kill Canada.
Yes, maybe God hates musical theater. And also,
God has left the chat.
Who doesn't hate musical theater?
Yeah, I enjoy good theater.
Exactly.
I feel like you're secretly
that's some shit that only people from like the Pacific Northwest,
you probably enjoyed
Canada say so.
Yeah, I bet you secretly enjoyed the movie Cats. I bet you were like,
no.
I bet you go, this is so good.
I did watch Rent multiple times.
You say you didn't like the movie Cats, but why do you have cat ears on that box behind you?
What? There's no cat ears on that box. It's a fucking skull.
I'm saying that because no one can see what's going on. You're supposed to agree with me.
Yes. Hey, look, we can't see his second half. We know Adam's probably just like from the top up being like,
take my
I'm a cop, and then secretly he's like, I got these cute little stockings on in this skirt. It's so nice. I bet you sit there 525,600 minutes. You're like, I love AIDS the play. That's your
okay, I'm not gonna lie. I did like that movie a lot.
I never actually saw that. I just remember the only version of Rent I ever saw was Team America World Police, where they're like, everyone has AIDS, and their puppets are all dancing around.
I never saw that one.
Team America World Police?
Oh, dude, how have you not seen Team America World Police?
I don't remember that part. Wait, is that the same thing where it's like America, fuck yeah?
Yeah, it's
I've seen that before.
He's the actor. That's where they get him. He's at the play. He's the musical actor in Rent, and they're like, instead of singing the songs, they're singing the song "Everybody Has AIDS." And they're all like,
damn.
Singing about
Maybe
AIDS.
that was before I knew what Rent was, but yeah, once I saw that movie, I watched it a good bit of times.
God, I just showed that movie to Jax, my younger brother, like a year or two ago. That movie's so fucking good. Still, even now,
it's also very relevant.
Yeah, even if you don't know the actors, and even better now, you got Alec Baldwin, and you're like, he's still in trouble. And all the celebrities get together, and they're all having their conference about what happens in the world. It's like, God damn, this is so good.
Jesus Christ. It is such a good movie. That and Idiocracy, which I also would recommend anyone.
I've seen enough clips from that where I feel like I've watched the movie, but so I've just never watched it. But I should probably just watch it.
You should just watch it beginning to end. President Leo Camacho, played by everyone's favorite Terry Crews, is fucking incredible. And also the fact that the movie was buried for its anti-corporate, anti-political message. It's very relevant. It's very relevant. If you told me
sometimes relevant things just depress me. Like I watch something, I'm like, yeah,
that's fair.
and everyone clap because we agree.
Yeah.
And then we go home and we just be like, I'm going to do the December challenge where I try to make it through the month of December. You're just like, that's where.
Without eating a gun. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's why I think sometimes I enjoy really good anime because it's the final form of media free from the throes of Western hysteria. So you just get like good stories and then, just some shit that makes me laugh. I enjoy good fucking comedies. Like I'm just like, I started this show Norseman. I don't know why it took me this long to hear about it.
It's
but
great.
Norseman, it's great. It's like The Office, but with Vikings.
Yeah.
And the humor is really dry and like, I'm like, this is fucking great. I could get into this.
Chalky, what would you say are the biggest problems with policing in the modern era? And just like law enforcement in general.
Cracks knuckles. Let me tell you.
Well, apparently they keep killing black people. No, I'm kidding. So dude, honestly, bro, it's fucking training, man. Like, I understand departments aren't going to train people and they aren't going to train you to the extent that you need to be trained to. Okay. Just in general across the board. But if these departments aren't going to implement these things anytime soon, where, you're trained and you're capable of stopping a threat, no matter what threat comes, you're capable of stopping that threat or at least surviving long enough for your backup to get there and help you overwhelm them. Okay. Then people are going to have to start doing it on their own. I remember going to the gym, I started training MMA and jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, because for one, I loved fucking martial arts. I love Muay Thai. I've always loved it. I've always done like wrestling and shit in high school. So it just kind of was something that I like doing. But whenever I trained for the street. I didn't train because I'm like, I want to be better than this guy in the gym. I'm like, okay, no, every time I fight someone in the gym, I'm going to pretend like this is life or death. If this guy beats me, he's going to get my gun. And so I remember fighting people on the street before and after I trained. Like I've always been a good fighter. Like I fought a lot as a kid. I fought a lot in school. I've always been good with fighting. But once I started training jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and striking, I was on a completely different level. Like I remember I had to take some guy down. He's like flashing a knife at people at Walmart. This guy's like, he's just off his fucking rocker, young kid. And I remember just how calm and under control I was when I had to go hands-on with him versus before I did BJJ, I would have just did a wrestling takedown on him and just, started striking him. But instead I put this guy in a freaking Americana until he gave me his hand. And then he gave me his hand and cuffed him up, found the knife, And I just remember thinking like, dang, this guy has no fucking clue what to do. From the time I grabbed him and took him down, he started spazzing out. He didn't know how to fight. It was obvious, he's never been like in a fight with someone who actually knows how to fight. And then once I started doing moves on him, putting him into the Americana, he had no idea what to do. He started tapping and I'm like, what? I'm like, bro, ain't no tapping in the street. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, you better give me your other hand or I'm going to break the shit, And it just
ain't no tapping in the street. I'm going to fuck you up. You earned this.
So it just occurred to me, like, if you've never trained at that level and you fight someone who's never trained at that level, it's just not fair. And it's comical, honestly. And you're just so relaxed and calm. The same is true for gunfighting, I think, or when you're in a position where you have to get into a gunfight with someone and they have no training or they have very minimal training and you're trained at an advanced level and you know what you're doing, and you make sure you have the tactical advantage. Same thing. So that's the biggest problem with law enforcement today, is that just that culture of not being trained and not being trained well enough, just thinking, oh, this won't happen to me. And if this happens to me, then someone else will help me. Or, it's like, no, like nobody else is going to help you. Like you got to help yourself.
Not to be confused with the time that, when it comes to training, Chalky hadn't done enough cocaine yet. And so when he ran through a cloud of cocaine, that a tweaker kicked in his face.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. You know, I had fought enough sober to where that when I was on cocaine, I was still able to hold my own very well.
Yeah, no, this guy literally, he showed me the video, kicks a fucking 8-ball from like down his pant leg into Adam's face. And then he fucking like poof, gets a cloud of coke in his face and then like sprints through and like hulks the fucking guy. Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was definitely an experience. But yeah, if I had never fought before, I can't imagine fighting high if I had never fought before.
Yeah.
Like, I would have shot that guy, honestly, because I was like, after I got done, I was panicking, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. But I started panicking because I was high, but I had no idea that I was high.
Wait, didn't you tell me your heart rate? Like they were like, oh, you're good, man. And then they like checked your heart rate and they're like, actually, your heart might explode.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you know, you're a super healthy guy, but we're gonna just take you to the hospital just to make sure your heart doesn't explode. After they check my heart rate, I'm like, bruh. So yeah, I could just feel like, you know, something was off. I knew my heart was pounding, and I had ran and fought, but I didn't run that far. And it had been, you know, some time had passed, maybe like 10 minutes. I was like, my heart rate should have returned to normal. Versus if I got that exposure and I wasn't trained and I didn't do training by myself outside of just what the academy or the Marine Corps taught me for combatives, then yeah, I would have popped that guy for sure, because he's swinging at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is going on right now? I remember everything just felt so slow motion.
You just went
I
Matrix.
think that hand-to-hand combat is something that everyone tends to ignore. And I'm absolutely guilty of it. I really need to focus more on it. But you are a lot more unlikely to get into hand-to-hand or a like non-lethal physical contact than you are to have to draw your gun and, you know, cap someone.
Yeah.
And it's something that most people aren't able to do.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a lot of times, even like, you know, the physical altercation escalates to that a lot of times. That somebody pulls a gun or they pull a knife or you're getting your ass kicked. And so you're like, oh, I'm not about to get knocked out, you know? So you pull your gun.
Yeah.
I just heard a story today actually from an officer where like there was someone where their officer was their guy they're with was getting basically trying to get like armbarred, like choked out by someone else, and he still wasn't entirely using lethal force. He was just trying to like subdue an officer, and it became a debacle. And he's like, fuck, I can't shoot him because you can't shoot someone under this criteria in this place that we're at. So fuck. And then he basically just had to get to a point where he like broke his hands on his face so that he could subdue him. This was some time ago, but he was just like, yeah, I basically just had to beat him into submission because I wasn't allowed to shoot him. And I'm like, that's wild.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I've thrown hands. I've drew my gun a lot when I was policing, just because of the place that I policed at. It was like, you know, I remember in the academy, they told us, they're like, most of y'all will go your whole career without ever having to break leather or, you know, remove your gun from your holster. And I was like, bullshit. I was like, my partner calls me every week. He's drawing his gun. And they're like, oh, well, that's because you work here. Like, they knew where I worked. I'm like, oh. And so I was always drawing my guns. But the amount of times that I chased and fought somebody was way more times than I've had to, like, draw my gun and point it at someone, you know?
Yeah. No, it 100% makes sense. Most of the threats you're going to come into are going to be more likely to be a rowdy drunk than, you know, someone running around with a machete hacking at people in a shopping mall.
Yeah.
Not saying that the latter doesn't happen, but I want Paige to come back. She just ran out of the room for a second. But I want her to clarify what happened with that cop, because it just sounds like he beat the fuck out of someone. Like he put a lot of, but it doesn't sound like that. It was super great. She's like, oh yeah, you know, I couldn't shoot him, so I just pounded his face until I broke my hands to get him in submission. I'm like, what? That doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound like he was a good guy, but you know, maybe we should. Paige. So I was just thinking about what you said about the cop who's like, yes, I just got into an altercation. I couldn't pull up my gun and shoot him because of where we were, so I just beat him until my hands broke. It sounds pretty bad. I think you're gonna have to add some context. It doesn't sound like he just, you know, did horrible police brutality.
No, it was like legitimately one of those things where the guy it sounds like he got out of control, and then
Stop resisting.
It became a thing where it was like the guy was just fucking cracked out hurting people, but it was like he was at a point where they couldn't get him subdued, and he was violently lashing out, and they had to fight back. Like, sometimes these people, they get fucking crackhead strength. Like, that's real shit. They don't stop. You can't tase them. You can't kill them, because at that point they're not like, they don't have a weapon. They're not assaulting anybody with a deadly weapon. They're just flailing around being fucking crazy, and you have to get them arrested. And when you got these people who are sitting there beating back doing crazy shit, you just gotta fucking go. And sometimes they just don't go down.
It's called a boss fight.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I'm sure Adam knows crackhead strength's a thing, man.
No, I've seen the videos of just people like there was one I saw a little while ago. Some dude got tased, I think 12 times, and peppered. He was in a room with a knife, just barricaded. They tased him, I think somewhere between 8 and 12 times, and pepper sprayed him. They were using every non-lethal option possible, and he was just standing there taking it all. He had I don't know, severe mental breakdown. PCP, crackhead energy, I don't know.
Dude, that PCP shit's wild. I remember watching this footage of a guy in DC. He was on fucking supposedly like PCP equivalent, whatever. And I remember really not understanding what that meant. When like, yeah, like it really numbs you. You do crazy shit. You got the super strength. And I was like, I don't know, probably a young teenager time when I saw this video. This motherfucker's like swinging around a lamppost, and he literally disembowels himself. And he's sitting there and he starts pulling out ropes of his own intestines. And he's just like alive, dragging his intestines on the ground, like walking around, just like sitting there fucking doing some fancy dancing with his hands and his eyes bugging out of his head. And he's just got blood all over his body because he's been gutted. And like a weird, curious animal, he's sitting there looking at his own insides, like not processing what's going on. And then the sack, you have a sack that holds your intestines and stuff in, so that split clearly because he starts pulling them out, because it starts like with the sack, and then he just like pops the fucking guts out, and they keep going, and then his other organs start spilling out, and he's still like walking and moving, like tripping on his own organs for like minutes, and then he finally just dies because his body has nothing left in it. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Based.
Yeah,
that's how I want to go.
I would
walk into an orphanage and do that.
Walk into an orphanage.
Like walk into a nunnery.
God has left the chat. This is why they want to kill Canada.
He just committed seppuku with the fucking with a lamppost.
It was wild.
Started pulling this shit out.
Well, and like I don't find many things that unnerving, or I'll find sometimes something like, like that's fucking gross, but most things don't really like shock me or like really gross me out. And in my hometown, I come from this total fucking shithole, Eureka, California. If you've been there and driven through it, and there was this person one time, this is probably about 7-8 years ago now, and I'm driving to go to like Target or some shit. I'm with a friend in the car, and I see this guy, and we call them daywalkers. You got these fucking people walking around. They're gacked out of their goddamn mind, chewing on air, pulling out their hair, picking at their skin, whatever. And you see them walking around like literal fucking zombies. So we're at this stoplight, and I see this guy, and he's gaunt, all kind of fucked up and scabby. But he turns to the side, and it looked like Two-Face from like a Batman movie where you see the hole cut out, those piercings that show your teeth through them. And he had this gaping hole in the side of his mouth that just exposed all of his teeth. And he had like gum and like teeth like kind of hanging out of his cheek. Like it looked like someone had taken a pole and like punched it through his mouth on the other side or something, but he was just like necrotic. So it had clearly been there for a little while. And he just like turns and his face is all fucked up. And I was like, I don't usually like audibly gasp. Paige was like, gasp, what is this? And I was like, these people are really fucking zombies. Like this is the real world zombie fucking crisis. It was nuts. That was a real mental turning point of just how grotesque something could be and still live. And I'm like, man, that's just real fucked up. Or you get people walking in, and there's a smell people have when they have like renal like renal failure, or like their body like gets sepsis and it stinks. They permeate like a stench when they have sickness like that. And you can smell illness in that way. But these people, they smell like rotting flesh. And rotting flesh, if you've ever smelt it, it is so different from anything else. Like, it's so different. Like, in fact, I think it's they use like tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of rotting flesh to put in otherwise scentless gases. Like propane is a scentless gas, but they put like an essence of that in a micro amount, just enough because a human will, no matter what, be able to distinguish that that's a bad smell. Like, we know to react to it. So you get people sometimes who walk into one of the many places I'd worked throughout, my formative like teenage years and early 20s, and you get guys walking in who they just reeked like death. Like, not just like stingy, like piss and shit, like hobo stink, but they just stank like death. And then you'd see him and like he wouldn't have shoes on, and you'd notice that his feet were rotting or the bottom of a foot was coming off. And you're like, this guy's just fucking walking around like that. Holy shit.
That makes me sad. Just
it is sad.
It exists. It absolutely exists. It's
you see something like that, and people talk about all these issues, whether it's gun violence this or trans people that, or it's abortion or crime, or enter whatever incendiary, emotionally guided topic of fixation that's a problem of society. And every politician or us versus them, rhetoric will be like, yeah, these issues because of these people voting this way or whatever. You're like, no, gun violence isn't a problem. Why there are people committing crimes is the problem. They look at, this demographic of people commits more crime, or this demographic of people has a propensity to do this or do that. And you're like, well, why is it that they're doing those things? They'd rather just like attack the issue. Like, there's all these fucking tweakers. And you're like, well, yeah. So why are there so many tweakers? Like, what system's enabling it? Oh, these cops are really fucking shitty. These cops are bad. Well, why are cops bad? Because they have no funding to actually have training. They have no criteria to hire people that are fit or smart. Like, what do you expect?
I respectfully, I don't want to say I disagree with that necessarily. I just have more to add on it. I think I would elaborate. It's not funding that's the problem. It's the entire culture around it, starting all the way from the politicians, and it works all the way down. You can throw dollar after. It's like, for example, the insanely bloated military budgets. You can throw money after money after money, and train people to be the best warfighters possible. You can do all sorts of stuff, but it doesn't train toxic behaviors around policing. It doesn't train toxic behaviors around social work. It doesn't actually address any of the root issues that make these things necessary. Crime is mostly centered around poverty, and crime and policing are usually indicative of the culture that surrounds them. If you fix the issues culturally, you might be able to at least fix some of the root symptoms of, and I say that, nowhere is perfect. Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. But unfortunately, the bureaucratic solution it's one of two things. It's like, we'll defund them, or we will refund them, and none of the nuance into actually doing either of those things properly is thought of. That being said, anyone who's listening to this knows my very Kaczynskian politics, so I'm going to keep that to myself for this episode. But he did say specifically about the psychology of a lot of people these days, which is simply focusing on issues that don't matter as a distraction for the issues that they know that they can't actually change. And once those issues have been changed, they simply move on to the next one, because the issues themselves don't matter. It's the feeling of oppression and the feeling of satisfaction and the feelings of being a better person and being morally righteous for having the beliefs that they do.
I think politics are just really the new religion, though, in any way. People are like, people don't need religion. I'm like, yes, they do. That's why they always gravitate towards it. Whether your religion is politics
Joe Biden or the Kardashians.
Well, and like, what's interesting to me is like on that topic of just people in a system, right? I just double checked my work here to make sure that I wasn't just spewing, smoke effectively. The average homeless person, it varies, but the average homeless person in Seattle costs the city anywhere from roughly $30,000 to $90-something thousand a year. That's a big spectrum, but that's a lot of money per person when you look at how many people there are. And the reason this is because of resources, tax dollars, ambulances, different things like that go from city funding and people funding to do that thing. And I think to myself sometimes, okay, you know what, how are we getting all these people? Well, there's too many people in a place where they don't want to work or they're born into bad places. And then you have people who argue like, you know, with from the studies that were published in that book, like Freakonomics, right? About how when abortion was legalized, how a bunch of effectively unwanted children weren't being born and the economy improved, crime rate declined, right? These things. And I see that stuff sometimes. I'm like, man, wouldn't it just be something if we spend this much money on people a year? What if we just paid people, if they wanted to, paid them to voluntarily fucking sterilize themselves? Imagine if Planned Parenthood offered a place where you could go, you could consent and say, I don't want children. And they'll be like, cool, here's $30,000. It's cheaper than it is for a homeless person. And you'd be willing to not procreate, thus giving someone a one-up and a big $30,000 can change a life for somebody. That could change a life. They argue about that. Oh, you give someone $10,000. It could change their life. It could change a fucking homeless person's life. Again, voluntary. Imagine if they offered that service where someone could go and be like, hey, like, I don't ever plan on having children. I'm never going to have children. Like, if that was something for me, I'd be like, hey, we'll pay you money and you can get your fucking tube snipped. Okay, cool. Great. I'll make $30,000 or $20,000. And it's like, if that were supported, we would have probably a lot less bullshit, because all the people who can't afford to have kids, all the people who end up abusing those children, even on accident, right? Because it sucks, especially if you're in a place where like people have kids and they are in a state where they feel like they can't safely get an abortion or something like that. And then you end up with that. Like, I just think giving the right for someone to consent to that, being like, hey, we'll give you money to take care of, to do this, and you'll have what you need. And then it effectively is a voluntary system for people to want to not contribute.
It sounds like eugenics.
Yeah, I wanted to say that.
There's no outward selection of that. It's if somebody wants to, and it could be any spectrum of individual.
Yeah,
but it's
but who are the people who need this money the most? The poor.
What's that?
Yeah. It's like, let's give these poor
who are the people who are
money
poor
to
and
not
desperate
procreate.
I just like, I look at it from the perspective of if someone's going to use that argument, you know, in economic status where, you know, people very vehemently, very strongly support Planned Parenthood, very strongly support the right to abortion nationwide. So why would those same people who support people's right to abort their children, why would they not support the right for people to voluntarily sterilize themselves and have it be paid for by the state?
Okay, I thought you were advocating for this. I thought you were like, yes, no, let's do this.
Eugenics.
Let's do this. I didn't think you were making a metaphor so much as like, yes, let's do this.
No, it's more just like if that's going to be the argument, and maybe I like didn't, you know, preface that. But either way, to me, I think it's something that
I could see both my reflection and Adam there, and both our faces.
Yeah,
but you know, the homeless population is overwhelmingly a bunch of white people in most places. So it'd be like, everyone would win out of that.
I mean, you know, poor white people are included in eugenics too, though.
Yes,
right? Like poor white people, and minorities.
The point I guess I bring up in that, I don't think something like that will ever go through, because our government needs poor people to be desperate. Because if we don't have desperate poor people, they don't have someone to blame who's taking from the pockets of those who are actually fucking taxpayers. And then you don't have something for the taxpayers to be angry at for those people taking their fucking money. So it's like that kind of thing's never going to happen, because the government always needs an exploitable class. It's why illegal immigration is still so supported in so many ways, coming from grow towns where they were full. They weren't legal citizens in California going to those grows. There's a whole bunch of murders. Watch the documentary Murder Mountain that was on Netflix about where I came from. Guess what? It's way fucking worse than that. There are so many bodies found in those fucking woods, and there's no ID. There's no way to identify them. No one knows. The government needs exploitable people to use. And this is why there will always be poor people. This is why there will always be a stream of invisible fucking people. And I say invisible because they don't have ID when they come here. They don't have visas when they come here. They get brought over by other fucking covert organizations and shit to bring people in to use them for farms and what have you. Like, we have a lot of Russian grows out in the Humboldt area that got busted for human trafficking rings for doing exactly that, picking up buses of people in Mexico saying that they're going to go work on a farm in California. Surprise! Actually, you're going to be force-fed amphetamines and be trimming, and if you leave, we'll kill you. That's real shit. I had a landlord who, at the time, her sister lived out by one of the reservations, and there's a lot of grows that skirt on like government land that people will they'll put grows on there illegally and stuff, go figure. But her sister gets this knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? It's late, and they're at their house in a field. You're like, who the fuck is knocking at our door, right? They check, and it's like this girl who's she wasn't like even 14 years old. She didn't speak a lick of English. She's in torn up clothes. She's got blood running down her legs. She's beat to hell. Turns out that she'd been part of a human trafficking ring that was being brought in for that. And like, that kind of shit is real, and it happens all fucking over. And it's because your government hates you, and they want you to be poor so that you're desperate, and then you have to work with them. And if you're not working with them, they need you to destroy the people who are actually being successful so that everybody can be oppressed together into modern slavery.
Oh, you will own nothing and be happy.
Live in the pod, eat bugs. I was like nodding, like, yeah.
Yeah, no, because I've seen the same thing on a different scale. Just basically, so it's like the projects, the welfare trap is like, basically, in order to live in Section 8 housing, which people make a lot of money off of, whoever owns a Section 8 housing, they make an ass load of money. It's like guaranteed money from the government every month. So why would you not own a Section 8 complex when you know your rent's going to be paid every month and you get money from the government? Because these people don't pay their rent. But it's like, in order to live there, you have to have a single parent household, right? So it's like, you can't have a husband in the house that works. So, or a significant other in the house that works. So what you get is a bunch of single women, usually minorities, some also white people is what I would see a lot of in these projects. And so right there, that destroys what's known as the nuclear family, because we'd have guys there. And if you're a guy and you're living in a Section 8 house, then the girl gets evicted. So what the Section 8 housing people would do, they're like, he's a guy.
Fuck, I didn't know that.
Fuck really? Yeah. They're like, he's a guy. He's not supposed to be here. Trespass him. And so he gets trespassed. So every time he comes back, he gets arrested, And so he's like, I'm trying to see my family. And so officers are like arresting him. They're like, well, you can't be here. Like, you're literally trespassed. But a lot of times what happens is they'll end up getting into like an argument, the guy and the girl. Police will get called out or something. They got into an altercation, maybe a domestic or just a verbal, nothing physical, just a verbal domestic or whatever. So then, they have a reason to be trespassed. And so it's like, boom, instantly you can't come here. So now you have just this young girl raising her kid by herself, and you can't make a certain amount of money. So she's like, I'm not going to get a job because in addition to the welfare, it's like she gets food stamps. She gets maybe $1,500 or like $1,000 a month, something stupid, just for food, and her rent's paid for, and her kids, they go to school and they come back, or she sits at home all day, or maybe she has a job on the side. But as soon as you're like, oh no, I'm married to this guy, you can't be in Section 8, you can't get food stamps, you can't do XYZ, So it's like that right there. It's like, why is that system like that? I grew to understand the system and why it was in place and what good it does do. Like, if it's used as a tool, it's like, you're just a single mother, maybe you're down on your luck, or maybe you're trying to raise your kids and you use that to get a job or get a degree or something, to get yourself out of that situation, or do better, put your kids through school so that they can have a better chance. Or there's people and they just live in that, like, generation after generation. I remember responding to households, and it'd be a young female who's like 16 or 15. She's like, I can't wait till I turn 18, or I can't wait till I turn 17. I'm going to get pregnant and get me an apartment. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And then they're like, well, if if you get a baby, then you can get food stamps and welfare and blah, blah, and WIC. And I'm like, hey, yo, this is crazy, but it's literally just a system, and it's so profitable. I remember one of the biggest Section 8 complexes in my city, one of the most notorious with the highest crime rates, was owned by the owner of the freaking Miami Dolphins. And I remember my city took him to court because they wanted that, and he wouldn't sell it to them at a good price. Like, he's trying to squeeze them on the price. So they beat him in court and basically evicted everybody, gave them vouchers to go relocate elsewhere. And they pushed down the whole fucking complex. But they aired his shit out. It was like Carolina Panthers training camp. They were scrimmaging with the Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins. And they're like, oh, enjoy your stay in our city while you're here. I'll send you the article when we get off your page. They're like, and they just aired out all his shit, just blasted out the owner. And that's when I started realizing, and we would look into who owns Section 8 apartments, and they're fucking multi-millionaires.
It's like the people who own any kind of charity, right? It's so everywhere you look, there's some fucking veneer of virtue signaling about what a good thing they're doing. And they're bleeding the profits into their own fucking pockets. Yep. American Cancer Association shit, never fucking donate to those cocksuckers. They don't do shit for cancer. The people who do the Breast Cancer Association literally go out of their way to gut and snipe any other organization that tries to support or advocate for breast cancer and survivors, because they want to capitalize on it. I'm like, fuck all of you. You are not about in any way the actual fucking cause. I hate that shit so much. That just contributes to a broken fucking system. You're saying these people being I want to get pregnant and have that's fucking, hey, guess what? If Planned Parenthood was I'll pay you $30,000, well, guess what? She'd get out, she'd take that 30 grand and she'd go get herself an apartment somewhere.
Christ. I have moral qualms with my tax dollars going to literally any of that. Who am I kidding? I don't pay. BR, take that out. Take that out.
And you have free healthcare.
free healthcare that
nothing is free.
Yeah, free healthcare that you can't get. Instead, the government just tells you to kill yourself.
No, literally, they're just it's cool. Yeah.
It is the 6th leading cause of death here now. And
damn, people
are waiting so long in the waiting list that they're like, no, you can just kill yourself. We'll help you.
God. And then suddenly my hypothetical plan of voluntary sterilization is bad. Just government paid funding for suicide. Actually, you should just die. It's probably easier for everyone.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll give your family just kill yourself.
Yeah, we'll give you $30,000, but in a month, someone's going to show up. You don't know where, you don't know when, but they're going to put a bullet in your head.
Be that's cool. Just make it cool, man. Just make it cool. Guess what? That exact thing can happen if you start messaging on honeypot forums about how you're a lonely incel who loves guns and has an anger with the people in your institution.
Oh, no, you're just going to get a free Daniel defense on and get driven to a local school.
Hey, I want to make a note though, just on the world of science and stuff. I know we're joking about it, no shit, eugenics. People forget too that eugenics literally just means a study of good genes, and that is why if you support in vitro, people who do in vitro stuff to see that hey shit, I can't get pregnant. I need to be able to do this, remotely. Those sorts of things are I think everyone just hears that word and associates it with oh shit, Nazi science. That shit was fucking terrible. There's a lot of terrible fucking things people did to try to get rid of and eradicate fucking people. But I think that on an actual scientific study, there's a really interesting documentary I actually watched on Netflix. I think it was called The Human Condition, and it was about CRISPR. So CRISPR is effectively a gene sequence where humans figured out how to edit genes. It's a really big deal, right? You're oh shit, now we can isolate the pain gene and we could effectively eliminate that. Wow, that'd be really great for cancer patients or people who are in excruciating pain before they die. And then you have people like Putin who are or we can make super soldiers who can't feel pain when they're tortured. And you're slippery slope, right? And it's the could and should thing. And it's when you see that, I guess I see a lot of weird stigmas and things like that. So I was trying to be hey, no, it's not just that thing. And people throw it around they throw around the word fucking Nazi, and now it's delegitimized that actual phrase.
Yeah, I digress though. I think that maybe some of it is, it starts off as like it was well meaning, like your idea, you're like, this is well meaning, but then it falls into the category of eugenics, which I think is honestly, I think it is just that. It's not like it's not a good thing, and anything good about it or that they try to paint as good is propaganda.
Yeah, that was it. The road to hell is paved on good intentions.
Yeah, so it's like it's easy to make anything seem good. I could play devil's advocate and argue for anything. Like I've argued that hate crimes don't exist. Like just to fucking, just to do it, just to prove that I can, and the argument got so heated that this white guy that's a cop, because we were in like in a course, he said, well, what if I went to your car and I scratched Adam is a blank into it, and everybody's like, yo, and like they're like, all right, they're like index, they're like, yo, he just made you lose control. It's like, obviously I believe hate crimes are wrong and they do exist. I don't believe that what most people say that was a hate crime is a hate crime. Like legitimate hate crimes are hate crimes, but it's like you say, you use stuff so much to the point where it just loses its
actual meaning,
actual value. Yeah, it's like,
oh yeah, there's so many terms that are just thrown around these, like the term racist, homophobic, all of that. Like, yeah, those things exist, but they have been overused to the point where I just don't care. 99% of the time that I hear it, it just means nothing. That it's just overused. It means nothing. I went into a local sporting goods store the other day, and God, I hate this. I hate this so much. I overheard the clerk say, and I'm just getting a glimpse of this conversation. Well, if you lean in any way conservative, you are racist and homophobic. And it's just like the laziest fucking argument. It's the laziest way to shut things down. And we're at the point where it's like the general population, a lot of them genuinely just think that way.
It's such a cop-out. Like, it's such an easy way to do it, which is like, I'll have arguments with... I was talking to someone the other day about it, and they're just your classic checkbox, liberal, young, naive about so many things, and like they got all this hope for the world. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but then they talk about all these, like, the biggest argument is about no one needing guns and all this stuff, and how, this violence isn't the answer and whatever. And I'm like, homie, you're an over 6 foot white male. I'm like, how many friends do you have that are from foreign countries?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any friends who are immigrants? Like, legitimate fucking immigrants, like, came here on a goddamn boat or a plane, like, did everything they could to get to America. And he's like, well, no. I'm like, okay. Like, when 100% of everyone I know who's like a minority who came from a communist country argues in the rights for, like, having a fucking gun or the right to protect yourself, I'm like, you've never seen violence. I'm like, you've never even been in a fight. Why is it? And I see it a lot in these insulated communities where I'm like, these people who've never actually seen violence are quick to dismiss it. Yeah. It's not until you get hit in the fucking face. I heard this guy one time, I might have even said it on one of their podcasts, but he was like an ex-gangster who had fled to Humboldt County, who had changed his name. He was like a 90s Crip. And so he was from that, left, got a degree, had a family, and he like told me about this one day. And he's like, because I had already been punched in the face, but my dad said that every 18-year-old has to get punched in the face so he knows what it feels like. And he's like, that was so humbling. So he had like, I don't know, it was like because his cousin or something, his dad punched his cousin in the face. And he's like, every 18-year-old needs to get punched in the face so they know what it's like.
Yeah, I agree.
Man, I'm like, that's humbling. That's good. Like, until you get people talking, I'm like, you talk a lot of shit for someone who's never been hit in the face.
Yeah. A lot of people feel like violence can never come to them for any reasons. And a lot of people think that if violence does come for them, they have a very false sense of security. Like, okay, oh yeah, I'll just deal with it. I'll just beat him up. It comes from a place of privilege. Not to overuse the term, I hate that term.
No, but it's in the going on the thing. If we're gonna talk about any of these terms and phrases being used in the actual sense, like, yeah, that's a real fucking privilege.
Yeah, it's like, okay, cool. You're what? Like, you're 6'3", you're a white dude. You live in a good area. You have money. Okay, you've never had to worry about these things. Like. And this isn't even getting into the politics side, which we don't have to dive into. But the idea of trusting a government to always be there to protect you if you ever have to is just insane to me.
Yeah, the real privilege of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. God, my mind jumps to the Oka crisis in Canada. The Oka crisis is when the Canadian government just decided, okay, all this native reserve land is ours now. We're going to build a golf course. We just sold it. And the native people got together, they got AKs, and they told the government to fuck off.
Good for them.
And then, yeah, no, it was great. So the government rolled in the fucking military, squashed it all, and then built the golf course anyway. And then they banned AKs.
They sent in the Mounties?
They sent in the army, actually. They sent in the Mounties originally.
They have battle mooses, so instead of horses, they use
I
mooses.
thought y'all just had Mounties. I didn't know. So y'all have like an actual army?
Yeah. I mean, more not very many of them. We get into it a little bit. There's not very many, but
surprising that the Canadians could have an actual military, but alas,
enough to retake the land from the Indians.
Enough to do that. That's basically. But people talk shit on the Mounties, but it's like if there's going to be a boot that's used, it's going to be the fucking Mounties. It's
I feel like
no
the Mounties,
one...
like fish and wildlife officers and stuff up here, like they don't fuck around. Like you don't fuck with the fish and wildlife feds. I feel like a lot of Mounties are just kind of like that. Like they see. I did not realize that fish and wildlife fed guys will see more fucking gunfights than most officers in certain places. Like just because they'll go out to the woods and be like, hey. And then they're like, we got nods and we're hunting these animals illegally. We're going to fuck you up.
Yo, no shit. I was in fucking federal court. Okay, we had to transport this guy. And he was there for like a fucking... I can't even remember what he was there for. It was like some super serious shit. I was there with like my special agent in charge. And the marshals are standing there and they call in the next guy. He comes in with a fucking... I don't know. He was one of those like fish and wildlife officers, just a normal fucking uniformed fucking whatever wildlife guy. And this guy was there for a fishing ticket in federal court because he was like, maybe he was at a state park or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was literally a ticket and they had to hear it in federal court. So this guy is under arrest in federal court for fishing ticket. And I was like, what? And his case is being heard right before my guy who's like a really bad dude. And I was like, how does this make sense? Because he didn't have a fishing license?
Oh yeah, it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's wild to think that you can have these people out there who like they can tell you know what food you can and can't eat or like what you can and can't hunt, but they'll get out there and be like, I know there's a lot of crooked fucking officers who'll be like, oh, it's cool, we'll just, or at least don't know personally, but crooked officers are like, yeah, we'll just hunt whatever we want. Like
he's gonna arrest us. Me?
Yeah, they can't arrest me. And I was like, damn, like, that's not good. That's spicy. That's no good.
Well, like, I don't like rules for thee and not for me, so maybe not based. But yeah, fuck those rules. Fuck the enforcement of them. And fuck having to show up in federal court for it.
Man, we covered a lot of ground tonight.
We did.
And just disclaimer, I'm not in support of Nazi eugenic science, just so that's
good.
Your hair started to look
just in case someone's like, well, it's like, no, this is
I don't know. I started seeing your roots look like they're actually blonde.
Do you see this?
You might be a little undercover
through me. It's there. I got it. It's real.
What's that little red armband in the corner of your room, Paige? I see that. It's like it's an interesting little symbol in the middle of it.
I'm a good old American mutt. I got all the things in me.
Yeah.
What do you do? No, I don't know. It's silly. I joke about it, but it's like people care so much about things. I don't say anything I wouldn't stand by. I'm just like, I'm going to argue. I'll argue shit, but I'm like, if someone can't.
No, it's fucking hilarious. You're going to have to send Paige the video of like minding your face, how it started getting progressively. I was looking and then I was looking at you.
Video. It's like,
oh my gosh. No, it's not. Oh man. It was.
Yeah, but
yeah.
It was like, yes, we just pay them to sterilize themselves. It's all right. Like, you didn't preface with like, oh, this is the argument you use. You're just like, no, let's fucking do this.
No, I skipped a beat there.
Yeah,
but you know, it'll make for good views. They're gonna listen and they're not gonna stop, and then the breaks are gonna come and they're gonna be like, oh, okay.
Oh.
But no, hey, like that was the parallel though, right? You look at that and you're like, what's like ultimately like what's the difference there? Like, well, are you going to kill an unborn child or are you going to sterilize yourself? If you support one, support the other. What's the difference?
I mean, that argument's between you and God, Paige. I'm going to I'm just going to shut my fucking mouth on this one because it is.
Paige is like, hear me out. She's like, hear me out. We take the poor people and the coloreds and we sterilize them.
We sterilize them. We throw them in the ocean.
And then we put them into their own. We give them money and put them in their own area. We'll call it the ghettos.
I think like you got 2 water fountains in public buildings, one for the sterilized, one for unsterilized.
She's like, hey, if they don't want their babies anymore, we'll take care of that too.
And like we joke about this, but then there's like China, who's been doing this shit for like all the CRISPR shit about like eugenics. They never stopped.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
like,
no,
you want blonde hair, blue-eyed babies? Let's fucking go. You want fucking 3-headed sheep or clone shit? We can do it. Like that shit's been nonstop. There's some wild side, and who knows? That's just the shit we know about. That's been like declassified or found out about.
Gosh. That's what I live by now. When I see shit and they're like, oh, this, I'm like, that's just the shit that we know about. Like, you think we wouldn't know about this shit if we weren't supposed to? Like, nobody gives a fuck that we know about this. They leak us this little bit of shit because we don't. Like, the first time I did like a big operation with like HSI, DEA, FBI, like, and everybody, like the shit that we had access to is shit I've only seen in movies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm doing this shit at this level, dude, I can only imagine what's actually happening. Like, I think of the movie, what is it? What's the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? And he's like, you see in the Middle East, and like they're watching him with a satellite.
Was it like a new one?
It's
like some Manchurian Candidate
like
shit?
Early 2000s.
All I can think of was Eagle Eye, but that wasn't DiCaprio.
Whatever. Anyway, one of those movies where he's being watched.
It's one of those white guys.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Well, they all look the same.
Yeah. So, and this was a couple years ago. So I'm like, yeah, dude, nothing is off the table. Nothing is impossible. No. Like,
the easiest comparison I like default to is I think about the SR-71. It was made in 1971 and declassified. I don't remember when it was declassified. It was was it like the 90s? Or was it the 80s? Came later? But the SR-71, it's literally a kill streak in Call of Duty, if you guys don't know what that is. Anyway, it traveled at Mach fucking speeds, could do crazy surveillance from like beyond the earth. It was amazing. And you're like, this shit was made in the fucking 70s.
Yeah,
and
it was all analog.
Epicness. And then it was like, who the fuck knows what we have now?
No, absolutely. Well, our bloated military budgets go somewhere. And it's definitely not to the troops, so...
Hey, well, you know what? On that note, aliens probably exist. Your government hates you.
Yes.
And Canada thinks you should kill yourself. Also,
Canada's government really, really hates you. You see that footage of the RCMP horses, the Mounties trampling that poor old woman?
Sounds right.
Yeah, no, that happened during the protests. There's pictures of it, like trampling her with horses.
Canada doesn't have horses.
I just see Chalky's eyes, his eyebrows just fucking raised.
Yeah, you can't do that shit in America, though.
Yeah. I'm just going to like get a picture of that and put it into the chat.
Wait, what are you putting in chat now?
The horse trampling on an old woman.
Oh, goody. Just what I wanted to see. I'll put it right next to my other little file of things Nathan likes. Nipple belt. Woman being trampled by
I do not like the
Nathan liked. He clearly said he liked it. We're just going to supercut this. This is going to be the most spicy podcast. We're like, Nathan loves seeing old ladies die.
Was it like a riot or something?
Eugenic science.
It was. Oh, you didn't hear about the convoy protests?
Oh, with the 18-wheelers?
Yes.
Yeah, because I could totally see that shit happening like up north, where in northern United States, where they police with horses and shit, and they moving people with horses. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, but yeah, it was kind of fucked up.
I think that we covered a lot of ground tonight, though, guys.
Yes, no, absolutely.
I'm really glad I got to link you two up, and we had some good chats. And
yeah, me too.
All the things. Yeah. We talked about foreskin. Oh, we get to ask Adam for dad advice now.
Yes.
Oh wait, but first your plug. He has to give us his plug.
Yeah, go follow your boy over there on Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, every social media. Chocolate Operator.
Hard R. Operator.
No. Y'all don't have to say operator
Yeah.
with an A. You can't say There you are. Don't be hitting me with that hard R.
No, he's kind of funny sometimes and does stuff. He streams. He's the one who got me banned on Twitch. I mean, you guys that follow me, we're doing some artwork, and we got.
Oh yeah. Speaking of my, so I was on Discord with Zydax before I jumped on with y'all, and we figured out my Modern Warfare 2 issue. So I'm gonna be streaming that shit. So Paige, you're gonna have to play Warzone with me. I haven't forgotten. So
the new Warzone supposedly sucks cock. I haven't played it yet. I've just been watching the masochistic trends.
It's good. So I mean,
I'll do it for you. All right, I got to close out with some dad advice.
Yes.
If you're a gun person or you have guns, or you practice self-defense, go train. If you have all this gear, if you have kit, if you have weapons, go train. Because if you don't, you're just a fucking loot drop. And when shit hits the fan, you're a loot drop. Just know that.
Very much agree with that, and that is a pretty good one to end on. Paige, before you go, you have to...
Oh, you know what? I heard a quote I really liked today. I saw it online, and I just... I even actually posted it to my own Discord because it was so fucking good. It was in the response, when someone says to you, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
Oh,
the response to this was, I need privacy, not because my actions are questionable, but because your judgment and intentions are.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I like that.
I also like because fuck you, that's why, which is my response to most things.
Yeah.
Combined with we are all the criminals now. If you follow laws that... Well, if you follow gun control, you're a pussy. And if you aren't hurting anyone and no one sees it, who cares? Keep doing it. You want. I don't give a shit. Also, buy a Chris Vector. They're dope. Okay, bye.